The prophet Jesus, peace be upon him, is a chosen servant charged by God with calling people to the true path, just like all the other prophets. The life of this blessed person is full of miracles acknowledged by God, from his birth to his ascension to the sight of God. The prophet Jesus cured the sick, raised the dead, and gave life to inanimate clay. There is one more miracle to come, one which believers in the two great revealed religions are impatiently waiting to come about, a day which they are busily preparing for. The prophet Jesus will return again to earth. He will unite all believers against unbelief. He will cause Islamic moral values to prevail all over the world, and he will bring peace and wealth to all mankind. Mary was descended from the line of the prophet Abraham, one chosen by God. When the wife of Imran, a chosen servant from this family, learned that she was to have a child, she turned to God and prayed, and dedicated the child to be born to God. My Lord, I have pledged to you what is in my womb, devoting it to your service. Please accept my prayer. You are the all-hearing, the all-knowing. When she was born, the family gave the child the name Maryam, Mary in English. The name Mary means someone who is always worshiping God. Like the other members of the family of Imran, Mary was also a devout servant with a sincere belief in and wholehearted devotion to God. Mary was most virtuous, a role model for all Muslim women. God chose Mary for a sacred duty. She was the blessed individual who would give birth to the prophet Jesus. In the Quran, God has revealed that at a certain age, Mary departed from her family and withdrew to a deserted region towards the east. At that time, God sent the angel Gabriel to Mary, who imparted glad tidings to her. This is revealed thus in the Quran. I am only your Lord's messenger so that he can give you a pure boy. She said, how can I have a boy when no man has touched me, and I am not an unchaste woman? Gabriel replied that God has the power to do anything, and that he needs only to say, be, and it is. Thus it was that by a miracle from God, Mary conceived the prophet Jesus, although untouched by human hand. Your Lord says that it is easy for me. It is so that we can make him a sign for humanity, and a mercy from us. It is a matter already decreed. So she conceived him, and withdrew with him to a distant place. According to historical sources, the prophet Jesus was born in the city of Bethlehem in Palestine in 7-6 BC. After his birth, Mary returned with the prophet Jesus from the deserted region she had gone to alone. In the face of this, certain hard-hearted Jews refused to believe her and uttered ugly slanders against her. When confronted the situation, she turned to God and placed her trust in Him, knowing that He would help her against her people's accusations. God supported Mary and the prophet Jesus with miracles. At the will of God, the prophet Jesus spoke to people while he was still in the cradle. This great miracle is revealed thus in the Quran. She pointed towards him. They said, "How can a baby in the cradle speak?" He said, "I am the servant of God. He has given me the book and made me a prophet. He has made me blessed wherever I am and directed me to do prayer and pay poor due as long as I live, and to show devotion to my mother. He has not made me insolent or arrogant. Peace be upon me the day I was born, and the day I die, and the day I am raised up again alive." At the time when the prophet Jesus came into the world, Palestine was under the oppressive rule of the Roman Empire. Various sects had appeared within Jewish society which interpreted their religion in different ways. The great majority of people had turned away from the true religion revealed by God to the prophet Moses, and superstitious traditions and distorted beliefs were widespread in society. Moreover, the pagan Hellenic culture had also begun to reveal its influence. In short, the time of the sending of the prophet Jesus was one in which the people of Israel were facing enormous political, economic, and social difficulties. On the one hand was the problem of living under the Roman yoke, and on the other, the splits between the various sects and beliefs. In such a chaotic atmosphere, the Jews were looking for a means of rescue and were waiting for a savior. God revealed a new book to the prophet Jesus to lead people to the true path and give them advice. That holy book was the Gospel. The prophet Jesus called on his people to believe in God, to sincerely submit to and live for Him, and to avoid sin and evil. He reminded them that the life of this world was but transitory, and of the imminence of death. He revealed that in the hereafter, everyone would be called to account for everything they had done. God allowed him to perform many miracles. He healed the sick and disabled, cured people suffering from leprosy, brought sight to those who had been blind from birth, raised the dead, The marvels performed by the prophet Jesus as a blessing from God were a means by which many people came to believe. The prophet Jesus, a role model for all people with his superior faith and moral values, explained that he had performed these miracles by the leave of God. According to the Bible, he always told the people he healed, "Your faith has saved you." However, despite the message communicated by the prophet Jesus, the superior intellect, moral values, and faith he demonstrated, and the miracles he performed by the leave of God, some people still persisted in their unbelief. They had no wish to turn away from their superstitious beliefs which they coveted for their personal interests. They devised a number of plots for him. And when Jesus, son of Mary, said, "Tribe of Israel, I am the messenger of God to you, confirming the Torah that came before me, and giving you the good news of a messenger after me, whose name is Ahmad." When he brought them the clear signs, they said, "This is downright magic." However, as revealed in the verse, God will not give the unbelievers any way against the believers. The snares of the deniers for believers are condemned to be confounded, as was that laid for the prophet Jesus. Despite all the obstacles, oppression, and cruelty, the numbers of those believing in the prophet Jesus grew every day. This in turn alarmed a number of ill-intentioned so-called Jewish religious scholars. Those who believed in the prophet Jesus gradually split away from the deniers. Certain so-called Jewish religious leaders hostile to the prophet Jesus were determined to eliminate him and prepared a plan for that purpose. They had no right to condemn him to death themselves, so they incited the Roman administration against him and groundlessly accused him of working against Rome, as they knew that the Romans were particularly sensitive and ruthless when it came to political matters. The aim of the deniers was the prophet Jesus' death. However, God confounded this trap of theirs and raised the prophet Jesus into his sight. The prophet Jesus did not die and was not killed. All that happened was someone resembling him was shown to the deniers. This fact is revealed in the Quran. And on account of their saying, "We kill the Messiah, Jesus, son of Mary, messenger of God," they did not kill him, and they did not crucify him, but it was made to seem so to them. Those who argue about him are in doubt about it. They have no real knowledge of it, just conjecture, but they certainly did not kill him. God raised him up to himself. God is almighty, all-wise. Christians believe that the Romans and Jewish religious leaders who arrested the prophet Jesus crucified and killed him, but that he later came back to life and was raised to the heavens. Yet this is not the case. There is not a single word about the death of the prophet Jesus in the Quran, while terms such as Qataluhu and Mata are used in verses to refer to the normal deaths of other prophets. The verb tawafa, meaning to take the self back, is used in reference to the prophet Jesus. When God said, "Jesus, I will take you back, and raise you up to me, and purify you of those who are disbelievers, and I will place the people who follow you above those who are unbelievers until the day of resurrection." In Arabic, the word that is translated as taking back here and causing to die in some translations comes from the root tawafa. This word does not actually mean death, but the act of taking the self back. either in sleep, in death, or, as in the case of Jesus, being taken back into the presence of God. From the Quran, again, we understand that taking the self back does not necessarily mean death. For instance, it can mean taking back the self while one is asleep, as indicated in the following verse. It is He who takes you back to Himself at night, while knowing the things you perpetrate by day, and then wakes you up again, so that a specified term may be fulfilled. The word used for take back in this verse is the same as the one used in Surah 3, verse 55, Tawafa. In other words, as is made clear in the verses, the Prophet Jesus did not die, but was raised into the sight of God. One of the most important facts imparted about the Prophet Jesus in the Quran and the Hadiths is that he did not die, but will return to earth before doomsday. There is a considerable body of evidence regarding this in the Quran. I will place the people who follow you above those who are unbelievers until the day of resurrection. When God said, Jesus, I will take you back and raise you up to me, and purify you of those who are unbelievers, and I will place the people who follow you above those who are unbelievers until the day of resurrection. Then you will all return to me, and I will judge between you regarding the things about which you differed. God mentions that a group of Jesus' true followers will dominate the unbelievers until the day of resurrection. Yet to date, no such group has ever lived. Jesus did not have many followers during his tenure on earth, and with his ascension, the religion that he had brought degenerated rapidly. At present, Christianity is so far removed from its original state that it no longer resembles the religion taught by Jesus. In our day, Christians have adopted the distorted belief that the Prophet Jesus is the Son of God, and possess a superstitious belief in the Trinity, representing the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. In this case, the verse, and I will place the people who follow you above those who are unbelievers until the day of resurrection, carries a clear message. Those who genuinely follow the Prophet Jesus will appear when he returns to earth, and will be superior to the deniers until doomsday. God knows best. There is not one of the people of the book who will not believe in him before he dies. There is not one of the people of the book who will not believe in him before he dies, and on the day of resurrection he will be a witness against them. The phrase, there is not one of the people of the book who will not believe in him before he dies, should be noted. Islamic scholars are agreed that the word him refers to the Prophet Jesus, because it is used in the preceding verses in reference to him. There is another noteworthy point in the expression, before he dies. What is being referred to here is the death of the Prophet Jesus. Yet the Prophet Jesus is not dead, but was raised into the sight of God. In other words, in order to die, he has to return to earth and live upon it. These verses therefore constitute irrefutable evidence that the Prophet Jesus will return to earth. God knows best, of course. And it is also revealed in verses that all members of the revealed religions will believe in the prophet Jesus. This has not yet happened. In the future, however, when the prophet Jesus descends again to earth, the people of the book will see and know him, will obey him as Muslims, and the prophet Jesus will bear witness for them in the hereafter. God knows best, of course. He is a sign of the hour. He is a sign of the hour, have no doubt about it. But follow me. This is a straight path. It is clear that the word he in this verse refers to the prophet Jesus. That is because the preceding verses also speak of Jesus and use the adverb he to refer to him. He is only a servant on whom we bestowed our blessing, and whom we made an example for the tribe of Israel. Indeed, almost all commentators on the Quran and great Islamic scholars agree that the he in these verses is the prophet Jesus. Therefore, this verse is a clear indication that the prophet Jesus will come back to earth at the end times. That is because the prophet Jesus lived approximately 6 centuries before the revelation of the Quran. Consequently, we cannot interpret his first coming as a sign of the doomsday. The meaning of the verse is that the prophet Jesus will return to earth in the end times. In other words, the final period of time before doomsday, and that this will be a portent of doomsday. Based on this interpretation, Abu Huraira, Ibn Abbas, Qatada, Malik ibn Dinar, Ad-Dahak, Abu Razin, Abu Abdurrahman, Humayd, and Ibn Mu'ayin state that the coming of the prophet Jesus will indeed be one of the signs of doomsday. In his commentary, Tabari interprets the verse thus: the appearance of the prophet Jesus is a sign revealing the coming of the hour of doomsday. That is because his appearance is one of the signs of doomsday. His descent to earth is proof that the end of the world has come, and of the beginning of the hereafter. God knows best, of course. He will teach him the book and wisdom, and the Torah and the Gospel. Remember when God said, Jesus, son of Mary, remember my blessing to you and to your mother when I reinforced you with the purest spirit so that you could speak to people in the cradle and when you were fully grown, and when I taught you the book and wisdom, and the Torah and the Gospel. The verse reveals that God will teach Jesus the book, the Torah, and the Gospel. Obviously, this book in question is very important. When we examine other verses in the Quran, we see that the term book refers to the Quran. In this case, the Quran is the third book that Jesus will be taught. But this will be possible only when he returns to earth, for he lived approximately 600 years before the Quran's revelation. It is therefore impossible for him to have learned the Quran during the time at which he lived. It is also revealed in the hadiths of our Prophet, may God bless him and grant him peace, that when the Prophet Jesus returns, he will rule not with the Bible, but with the Quran. He will lead you according to the book of your Lord and the sunnah of your apostle. In short, the Prophet Jesus will return to earth and will learn the Quran at that time. There is no doubt but that God knows the truth. The likeness of Jesus in God's sight is the same as Adam. The likeness of Jesus in God's sight is the same as Adam. It is also possible that this verse too refers to the return of the Prophet Jesus. Muslim scholars who have written Quranic commentaries point out that this verse indicates the fact that both prophets did not have a father, for God created both of them with the command, "Be." However, the verse could also have another meaning. Just as Adam was sent down to earth from God's presence, Jesus too will be sent down to earth from God's presence. God knows best, of course. The day I was born, the day I die, and the day I am raised up again alive. Peace be upon me the day I was born, the day I die, and the day I am raised up again alive. This verse speaks of the day on which he will die. This death can only be possible after he returns and lives on earth for a period of time. Of course, only God knows for certain. You could speak to people in the cradle, and when you were fully grown. Remember when God said, "Jesus, son of Mary, remember my blessing to you and to your mother when I reinforced you with the purest spirit so that you could speak to people in the cradle and when you were fully grown." He will speak to people in the cradle and also when fully grown, and will be one of the righteous. Kalan, which is used only in these two verses, only in reference to Jesus, and to express Jesus' adulthood, means someone between the age of 30 and 50, someone who is no longer young, someone who has reached the perfect age. Islamic scholars agree that it denotes the age of 35 or above. Yet, based on hadiths, they state that Jesus was raised up to God's presence in his early 30s. Therefore, the Prophet Jesus did not reach the age of Kalan during his first life. This may also indicate that he will return again to earth and live a second life. In the commentary of At-Tabari, Imam At-Tabari gives the following explanation of these verses. These statements indicate that in order to complete his lifespan and speak to people when fully grown, Jesus will come down from heaven. That is because he was raised to heaven when still young. Jesus will be recognized by the fact that he will have no relatives and that no one will know him. In Surah 3, verse 45, God informs us that the Prophet Jesus is of high esteem in the world and the hereafter, and one of those brought near. Thus, like all the prophets, Jesus will be known to those people surrounding him for the honor and excellence only seen in those chosen by God. Those who see him will recognize him at first sight, and there will be no doubt on this matter in their hearts. Apart from these, there will also be other factors disclosing his identity. No doubt, one of them will be the fact that he will have no relatives, family, or acquaintances on earth. Not a single person will come out and say, "I have known him before. I saw him when." These people are his family and relatives, simply because the people who knew him lived and died about 2,000 years ago. There is no doubt but that this criterion will invalidate the baseless claims of the false messiahs who will appear from time to time. Because it is most illogical for someone who spent all his childhood among people, and who has been known to countless people ever since, to claim that he is the prophet Jesus. When the prophet Jesus returns to earth, on the other hand, there will be no doubt as to his identity. Nobody will have any reason to say, "This person cannot be the prophet Jesus," because the prophet Jesus will return in the same form that he was raised into the sight of God, wearing the same clothes, and will possess superior features that no human being can possibly imitate. The proof so clearly revealed in the Quran, and the developments being experienced on earth, impart the most glad and holy tidings. It is certain that the prophet Jesus will return to earth in the end times, and will lead people to Islam, the true religion. This is great news for everyone on earth, and a source of joy and enthusiasm. The coming of the prophet Jesus is a blessing from God for all mankind, because with that coming, all the chaos on earth will come to an end. The moral values of the Quran will prevail everywhere, and the most superior age in all regards will begin. What we must do is to prepare for that glorious day in the finest manner possible, and welcome this holy prophet in the best way on his return. Indeed, God commands us Muslims to be like the disciples who assisted the prophet Jesus. You who believe, be helpers of God, as Jesus, son of Mary, said to the disciples, "Who will be my helpers to God?" The disciples said, "We will be the helpers of God." One faction of the tribe of Israel believed and the other disbelieved. So we supported those who believed against their enemy, and they became victorious.